has already arrived. So आप सबसे मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप सभी इमीडिएटली अपनी जगह ले लें। फॉयर में जो लोग खड़े हैं वो भी आकर अपनी जगह ले लें हॉल में, और एट्रियम में भी जो भी गेस्ट हैं वो सभी इमीडिएटली आकर ऑडिटोरियम में सभागार में अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। आप सभी प्लीज़ अपनी जगह ले लें। जो लोग पीछे खड़े हैं उनसे भी मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप सभी बैठ जाएं, क्योंकि नेक्स्ट, that is the second plenary session we are just going to start. Honorable Minister sir has already arrived. You all are requested to take your seats immediately, please. देवियों सज्जनों, माननीय केंद्रीय पर्यावरण, वन और जलवायु परिवर्तन मंत्री श्री भूपेंद्र यादव जी वो हम सब के बीच यहाँ स्टेज पर आ रहे हैं, इसलिए आप सभी अपनी अपनी जगह ले लें। आप सभी बैठ जाएं ताकि ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर सर के आने से पहले आप सभी पोजीशन हों, अपनी अपनी जगह बैठे हों। कुछ लोग अभी भी बाहर हैं, आप प्लीज़ अंदर आ जाएं। माननीय केंद्रीय पर्यावरण वन और जलवायु परिवर्तन मंत्री भारत सरकार श्री भूपेंद्र यादव जी का आइए करतल ध्वनि के साथ अभिनंदन करें, स्वागत करें उनकी गरिमामयी उपस्थिति के लिए हमारे इस प्लेनरी सेशन में। 16वें सिविल सर्विसेज डे के अवसर पर इस दूसरे प्लेनरी सेशन में आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत, अभिनंदन है। एज यू नो, हमारा इस सेशन का जो टॉपिक है, जो विषय है चर्चा का, प्रमोटिंग सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी फॉर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट, सतत विकास के लिए सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी को बढ़ावा देने का एक संकल्प है और उसी दिशा में तमाम उसके आयाम हैं, उन पर चर्चा होगी। और हमारे लिए बहुत सौभाग्य की बात है कि इस सत्र की अध्यक्षता के लिए माननीय श्री भूपेंद्र यादव जी, केंद्रीय पर्यावरण वन और जलवायु परिवर्तन मंत्री, जिनके पास भारत सरकार के श्रम और रोजगार मंत्रालयों का दायित्व भी है, वे हम सब के बीच पधारे हैं। उनकी गरिमामयी उपस्थिति को नमन करते हुए उनका हार्दिक स्वागत, अभिनंदन है। यह हम सब जानते हैं, माननीय मंत्री महोदय ने भारत के नज़रिए से बहुत सारे जो महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दे हैं उन्हें वैश्विक मंचों पर बड़े सशक्त ढंग से रखा है। COP26, G7 एनवायरनमेंट मिनिस्टर्स मीट जापान, G20 एनवायरनमेंट मिनिस्टर्स की बाली में जो बैठक हुई, इन सभी मंचों पर क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस और टेक्नोलॉजीज, रिसोर्स एफिशिएंसी और सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी को लेकर भारत की चिंताओं को, भारत के चिंतन को और भारत के प्रयासों को बहुत मजबूती से आपने वहाँ प्रस्तुत किया। और आप ही के नेतृत्व में प्लास्टिक वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट रूल्स 2021 नोटिफाई हुए। इन तमाम विषयों पर आप लगातार अलग अलग न्यूज़पेपर्स और जर्नल्स में लिखते भी रहते हैं, लोगों के बीच इस माध्यम से उसको लेकर जागरूकता भी होती है। और अंडर हिज डायनेमिक लीडरशिप, इंडिया गॉट इट्स 75th रामसर वेटलैंड साइट and also successfully reintroduced cheetahs in the world's first intercontinental translocation of wild species. तो ये बहुत सौभाग्य की बात है कि माननीय भूपेंद्र यादव जी हम सबके बीच इसकी अध्यक्षता के लिए यहाँ पधारे हैं। आपने सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑन फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन, उस पर आपने बुक भी लिखा मिलकर किसी के, और इस तरह के तमाम आपके प्रयासों से हम सबका मार्गदर्शन होता है। इस सत्र में हमारे जो पैनलिस्ट हैं, ऑनरेबल सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, लीना नंदन जी, वो हम सब के साथ हैं। सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड हाईवेज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, मिस अलका उपाध्याय। सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ पेट्रोलियम एंड नेचुरल गैस, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, श्री पंकज जैन। चेयरमैन एटॉमिक एनर्जी कमीशन एंड सेक्रेटरी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एटॉमिक एनर्जी, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, श्री के.एन. व्यास। Ms. Supriya Sahu, Additional Chief Secretary, Environment, Climate Change and Forest Department, Government of Tamil Nadu, and Shri Naresh Pal Gangwar ji, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India। आप सभी मंच पर विराजमान हैं। आइए एक बार सबके लिए करतल ध्वनि के साथ इन सभी का हम स्वागत करें, सभी का अभिनंदन करें। और इसके साथ ही मैं निवेदन करूंगा लीना जी से, सेक्रेटरी एनवायरनमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, कि वे इस सेशन को मॉडरेट भी करें और कंटेक्स्ट सेटिंग के साथ इसकी शुरुआत करें। लीना जी, प्लीज।
Honorable Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, my colleagues on the dais, representatives from state governments, central governments, participants of the Civil Services Day events, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about circular economy, the first thing that I would like to flag when setting the context is the principle, the notion of value. All of us are shaped by values. And values not only in terms of the ethics and the ethos that shape us as we grow, the values that we assign to our relationships and our experiences, it is also the values that we assign to the products that we use. And how can this value that we assign to the products, how can this be translated into the principle of turning waste into wealth? That is the crux of the discussion on circular economy. We all are aware of the principles of linear economy. So how exactly does circular economy develop? What is the impact that it has on environment? Why is it that the Environment Ministry thinks that it is so important to develop the principles of circularity in as many sectors as possible? And what is the efficiency and the value it brings to the processes that engage in circular economy? These and other aspects are what we hope to bring to you in the course of today's plenary session. And we have with us representatives from 3 ministries that are playing a very vital role in developing the principle of circularity. We also have a representative from the state government who will give her perspective on how the state government proposes and is indeed engaged in the process of this entire waste to wealth system. And above everything else, we propose to make this an interactive session. So I will request participants to kindly take note of whatever interests them. But while your ideas and innovations are interesting to us, we will request you to confine yourself to questions that you may ask the panelists to clarify on anything that you think is relevant in the discussion on circular economy. Thank you for joining us today, and I will request the Honorable Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change to kindly deliver the inaugural address.
मंच पर उपस्थित भारत सरकार के सचिवगण और मेरे सामने उपस्थित सभी भारत सरकार के अधिकारीगण, मैं जब आया तो मैंने पूछा कि लंच के बाद का सेशन है, बहुत कठिनाई तो नहीं होगी, पर आपकी प्रेजेंस देख के लग रहा है कि आप बड़े उत्साह से इसमें भाग ले रहे हैं। आप सभी लोगों को सिविल सर्विस डे के इस कार्यक्रम के अवसर पर बहुत बहुत बधाई और भारत के प्रशासनिक विकास के योगदान में जो सिविल सर्विस लोगों ने भूमिका निभाई है, उसके लिए भी आप सबका बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन। पूरे इस 2 दिन के सिविल सर्विस डे के कार्यक्रम का जो विषय है वो वास्तव में सिविल सर्विस की भावना के अनुरूप है, क्योंकि सर्विस का पूरा उद्देश्य हमारा सामान्य व्यक्ति को प्रशासनिक सुविधाओं से ऐसी अप्रोच के साथ जोड़ना है जिससे उनका एम्पावरमेंट हो और लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी हो। और पिछले 9 वर्षों में हमने देखा है कि सरकार ने अपनी विभिन्न योजनाओं को और कोविड जैसी महामारी से निपटने के लिए टारगेटेड डिलीवरी और लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी के लक्ष्यों को 100% अचीव किया है, और इसमें सिविल सर्वेंट की भूमिका भी बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण रही है। जो विषय इस सत्र में चर्चा का है वो सस्टेनेबिलिटी और सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी का है। एज ए पॉलिसी मेकर के नाते आप लोगों का पॉलिसी में कंट्रीब्यूशन और पॉलिसी के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में एक बड़ा योगदान होता है। और जब भी पॉलिसी किसी गवर्नेंस के द्वारा बनाई जाती है तो उसकी अप्रोच क्या हो। जितना भी दुनिया भर में क्लाइमेट चेंज को लेकर के आज सारे विषय चल रहे हैं, उसमें जो एक वेस्ट में पश्चिम देशों में जो एक लंबे समय तक पॉलिसी अप्रोच रही, जिसको हम कहते हैं एंथ्रोपोसेंट्रिक, उसका सामान्य सा पूरा डेवलपमेंट का जो कंसेप्ट था that regarding humankind as the central point or most important element of existence, और इसलिए जो भी पॉलिसी बनी वो केवल कंजम्पशन बेस पे बनी, और उसका परिणाम हुआ कहीं पर हम लोग दुनिया में क्लाइमेट चेंज में लैंड डिग्रेडेशन पे चिंता करते हैं, कहीं पर बायोडाइवर्सिटी लॉस पे चिंता करते हैं, कहीं पर क्लाइमेट चेंज में जो कंजम्पशन है उसमें 1.5 डिग्री की चिंता करते हैं, क्योंकि हमने यही मान लिया कि दुनिया में मनुष्य का विकास है तो सबका विकास है। और इसलिए फिर बाद में एक बायोसेंट्रिकिज्म विषय दुनिया भर में चला, और उसका पॉइंट रहा कि एज एथिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू दैट एक्सटेंड इनहेरेंट वैल्यू टू ऑल लिविंग थिंग्स, इट इज़ एन अंडरस्टैंडिंग of how the earth works, particularly as it relates to its biosphere और biodiversity। और यही कारण है भारत सरकार के पर्यावरण मंत्रालय ने जो अपना मोटो जो हमारा है वो प्रकृति रक्षिता रक्षता, जो नेचर की रक्षा करता है नेचर उसकी रक्षा करती है। और अब जैसे जैसे अवेयरनेस आ रही है, हमारा सेंस भी पॉलिसी को बनाते समय डीप इकोलॉजी की तरफ जाने लगा है। उसका स्थान हमारी पॉलिसी में भी होने लगा है, Or deep ecology is an environmental philosophy that believes that humans must radically change their relationship to nature from one that values nature solely for its usefulness to one that recognizes that nature has an inherent value. The philosophy calls for restructuring of modern human societies in accordance with such ideas. आज़ादी के अमृत काल में अगर आने वाले 25 सालों में सबसे ज़्यादा चिंता है तो नेचर बेस्ड विषयों की है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जब ग्लासगो में मिशन लाइफ को उन्होंने दिया एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली लाइफस्टाइल, एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली लाइफस्टाइल में हमारा ज़्यादा जोर इस बात का रहता है कि माइंडफुल कंजम्पशन हो रेदर देन माइंडलेस यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेस। जो शुरू में ह्यूमन में बेस्ड जो अप्रोचेस चली उसका आप परिणाम देखिए। हमें ये कहा जाता है कि हम दुनिया के चौथे बड़े पॉल्यूशन वाले कंट्री हैं, लेकिन दुनिया में आप कार्बन एमिशन का अगर स्तर देखेंगे तो हमारी आबादी 17% है, हमारा कार्बन एमिशन 4% है। इतनी ही आबादी अगर विकसित देशों के मिला दी जाए तो उनका कार्बन एमिशन 60% है। हमारा पर कैपिटा कंजम्पशन हमारी लाइफस्टाइल के कारण भी है। अफ्रीका के सारे 58 देशों को मिला दें तो उनका कार्बन एमिशन 4% है। पर प्रश्न ये है जो दुनिया भर में विषय चलता है, जो प्रधानमंत्री जी का एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली लाइफस्टाइल विषय भी चलता है, और ग्लासगो के बाद हमने देखा है कि प्रधानमंत्री जी के इस मिशन लाइफ को जब शर्म एल शेख में डॉक्यूमेंट पारित किया गया तो उन्होंने भी सस्टेनेबल लाइफस्टाइल की बात करी। मॉन्ट्रियल में जब बायोडायवर्सिटी कॉप हुआ तो वहाँ भी सस्टेनेबल लाइफस्टाइल को उन्होंने डॉक्यूमेंट का हिस्सा बनाया। और अभी कुछ ही दिन 2-3 दिन पहले जापान में भी G7 में भी उन्होंने सस्टेनेबल लाइफस्टाइल, सस्टेनेबल कंजम्पशन को अपना पार्ट ऑफ पॉलिसी, पार्ट ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट बनाया है। मेरा ये कहने का तात्पर्य इसलिए है कि एक जगह जब मैं अपने प्रतिनिधि मंडल के साथ विदेश में बात कर रहा था UNEP की सेक्रेटरी जनरल से, और मैंने उनको प्रधानमंत्री जी के मिशन लाइफ के विषय को कहा तो उन्होंने एक बहुत अच्छा मुझे जवाब दिया। उन्होंने कहा हम जो भी पृथ्वी से लेते हैं वो सब अच्छा लेते हैं, मेटल अच्छा लेते हैं, पानी अच्छा लेते हैं, हवा अच्छी लेते हैं, और जो हम रिटर्न करते हैं वो सब गार्बेज करते हैं, और सब ह्यूमन इंटरवेंशन से ही होता है। आप कुछ भी देख लो, किसी भी प्रोडक्शन का जो वेस्ट जाता है धरती से लिया हुआ वो वापस गार्बेज के रूप में जाता है। और ऐसे में अगर कंजम्पशन पैटर्न पूरे देश और दुनिया में बढ़ेगा और अगर उसको हम वापस से उसी तरीके से वापस करेंगे तो ये धरती कचरे का पहाड़ बन जाएगी। और यहीं से सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी और हमारे लाइफस्टाइल चेंज का विषय शुरू होता है। आप कल्पना करिए कि 2000 में इस देश में मोबाइल फ़ोन जस्ट इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ था और 2022 में हम बैठे हैं तो 125 करोड़ का पे लोगों के पास मोबाइल है। अगर ये सारा हर दूसरे साल वेस्ट के रूप में जाएगा तो कितना बड़ा कचरा खड़ा होगा। और फिर केवल मोबाइल नहीं होगा, मोबाइल के अंदर जो प्रीशियस मेटल्स हैं वो भी हैं। तो बार बार हम एक्सट्रैक्शन करते रहें, धरती से निकालते रहें और कचरा करके धरती पे छोड़ते रहें, फिर नया निकालते रहें, ये पैटर्न और ये लाइफस्टाइल बहुत लॉन्ग नहीं चलने वाली है। इसलिए ये टॉपिक है सस्टेनेबिलिटी प्लस सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी। एज ए पॉलिसी मेकर हमको भी होल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट अप्रोच के नाते इस विषय को आगे बढ़ाना पड़ेगा कि जिस गवर्नेंस के मॉडल में हम आम आदमी को एम्पावर करना चाहते हैं, वहाँ पर अगर इसी तरह का गार्बेज चलता रहा तो सबसे पहला नुकसान होता है पब्लिक गुड्स का। हमारी झीलें हमारी पब्लिक गुड्स हैं, हमारी नदियाँ हमारी पब्लिक गुड्स हैं, हमारे ओपन स्पेसेस हमारे पब्लिक गुड्स हैं, वो जनता की हमारी सामुदायिक प्रॉपर्टी है। उसका मेंटेनेंस करने के लिए भी इसकी बहुत आवश्यकता है। और इसलिए भारत सरकार इस विषय को लेकर के न केवल आगे बढ़ रही है, भारत सरकार ने इस विषय में अच्छे कदम भी उठाए हैं। इस बार के बजट में भी अगर हम देखेंगे तो बजट के अंतर्गत ग्रीन क्रेडिट की बात की गई है। दुनिया भर में भी पेरिस एग्रीमेंट में आर्टिकल 6 की बात की गई और उसके बाद एक कार्बन मार्केट बनाने की बात की गई। भारत ने भी अपने डोमेस्टिक प्रोसेस को पूरा करने के लिए काम किया और हमारी मिनिस्ट्री ने भी सभी मंत्रालयों के साथ सहयोग करते हुए इस कार्बन क्रेडिट विषय को आगे बढ़ाने की बात करी है। इस बजट में अगर हम देखेंगे तो सरकार ने वेस्ट टू वेल्थ के लिए एक अलग से प्रोविज़न का इस्तेमाल किया है। ये वेस्ट टू वेल्थ का अर्थ ही यह है कि जितना ज़्यादा कचरा हमारे यहाँ है उसका बिजली का उत्पादन, उसका अन्य उत्पादन की दृष्टि से हम कैसे आगे बढ़ें। पृथ्वी के इस तापमान संतुलन और बाकी विषयों को लेकर हमने देखा है कि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में पीएम प्रणाम, हमारे जो समुद्री क्षेत्र हैं उसमें मिष्टी, जिसको हम मैंग्रोव इनिशिएटिव फॉर सी शोर हैबिटेट एंड टेंजेबल इनकम्स, इस नाम से प्रोजेक्ट को शुरू किया। ये सब उस व्यवस्था की ओर जा रहे हैं जो हम एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली लाइफ स्टाइल या धरती को कचरे में न बदलकर एक रहने लायक स्थान बनाने के लिए कार्यरत हैं। और इसलिए ये जो अप्रोच है, इस अप्रोच को लेने के लिए पर्यावरण मंत्रालय के द्वारा ईपीआर के रूल्स पिछले 21 सितंबर को लागू किए गए। प्लास्टिक टायर गाइडलाइन को लेकर के इसके रेगुलेशन लागू किए गए, बैटरी वेस्ट के रेगुलेशन लागू किए गए, ई वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट के रेगुलेशन को लागू किए गए। और अब जैसे जैसे अलग अलग मंत्रालयों की जो अप्रोच आएगी उसको लेकर अलग अलग टेक्निकल कमेटीज़ का भी गठन किया, क्योंकि अनरेगुलेटेड वेस्ट जो है वो अल्टीमेटली हमारे गवर्नेंस, हमारे सिस्टम के लिए ज़्यादा खराब है। उससे अच्छा है हम इसको रेगुलेटेड करें, इसको एक इकोनॉमी के रूप में तब्दील करें। और इसलिए मंत्रालय, पर्यावरण मंत्रालय के द्वारा ईएलवीज के लिए, सॉलिड वेस्ट के लिए, लिक्विड वेस्ट के लिए, स्क्रैप मैटर्स के लिए और सीएनजी वेस्ट के लिए भी टेक्निकल कमेटी को बनाया गया है। एक अनुमान के अनुसार 2020-21 में अकेला जो प्लास्टिक वेस्ट जनरेशन है वो देश में 14 लाख टन था। ये बढ़कर के 21-22 लाख टन होने वाला है। तो इसका वापस से रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट करने के लिए और ई वेस्ट में भी 17 तरह के प्रीशियस और सेमी प्रीशियस जो मेटल्स हैं उसके लिए भी अलग अलग गाइडलाइन बनाना ये बहुत आवश्यक है। हमारे यहाँ पर मिनिस्ट्री हमारे एटॉमिक एनर्जी से बैठे हुए हैं, उन्होंने भी विशेष रूप से लिथियम आयन बैटरीज को लेकर के पॉलिसी को बनाया। और मैं इस बात के लिए भी बधाई देना चाहूँगा कि जो हम होल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट अप्रोच की बात करते हैं उसमें भी कई मंत्रालयों ने, केवल पर्यावरण मंत्रालय तो एक रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म के नाते काम करता है, लेकिन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ नेचुरल गैस ने 2G एथेनॉल को लेकर के, हमारी अर्बन अफेयर मिनिस्ट्री ने स्वच्छ भारत मिशन को लेकर के, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट जो हमारे साथ ही बैठे हैं इन्होंने नेशनल स्क्रैप पॉलिसी को लेकर के, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर खुद बजट में जो घोषणा हुई है पीएम प्रणाम, और उसके साथ ही साथ एटॉमिक एनर्जी का मैंने बताया। तो सभी मंत्रालयों ने इस सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी के विषयों की चिंता करते हुए अपने अपने मंत्रालयों में इसके पॉलिसी मैटर्स को लेकर के काफ़ी अच्छे कार्य किए हैं। लेकिन इसकी आवश्यकता इसलिए है, मैं अपने विषय को, चूँकि मेरा केवल ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स है, बाकी आप लोगों के जो प्रशासनिक अनुभव और आप लोगों के ज़्यादा, इसलिए मैं समराइज करते हुए सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी जो है उसका सबसे बड़ा विषय सस्टेनेबिलिटी का है कि हम कम से कम अपने मन में ये संकल्प करें कि हम पृथ्वी को कचरे में नहीं बदलने देंगे। इसलिए पॉलिसी मेजर्स बहुत आवश्यक है। दूसरा, हम ये तय करें कि कोई भी चीज़ होती है उसका एक सस्टेनेबल एंड यूज़ होता है। जब तक एंड यूज़ ना हो, नया एक्सट्रैक्शन ना हो, वरना धरती का एक्सप्लॉयटेशन होगा, यूटिलाइजेशन नहीं होगा। तीसरा, पृथ्वी का पे जब हम जीवन को और देश में जब हम विकसित विश्व को बात करते हैं तो अपने नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का वाइसफुल यूज भी हमारा होना चाहिए। और पर्यावरण के साथ अच्छे होते हुए जब हम इस पॉलिसी को इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं तो दुनिया भर में जो डीकार्बनाइजेशन का विषय और रिसोर्स सिक्योरिटी का विषय, उस पर हम दुनिया में आगे बढ़ेंगे। रिसाइकलिंग आने वाले समय की एक वेल्थ को बढ़ाने वाली, स्किल डेवलपमेंट को बढ़ाने वाली, रोजगार को बढ़ाने वाली ये भी नई इकोनॉमी है जिसकी तरफ हमें पॉलिसी इंटरवेंशन की तरफ से देखना होगा। और विशेष रूप से जो मंत्रालय एकदम जन व्यवहार की चीज़ें हैं, चाहे हमारा अर्बन मिनिस्ट्री है, जो बिल्कुल लोगों के साथ जुड़ाव आता है, जिसका इस सारे कचरे के को दूर करने के लिए, तो विशेष रूप से उनको जो प्रमोट करना चाहिए वो सस्टेनेबल डिज़ाइन को लेकर के प्रमोट करना चाहिए। मुझे लगता है कि आज इस सेशन में हम लोग जो चर्चा भी आप लोग करेंगे, उसमें होल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट अप्रोच लेकर के, जो हमारे भारत की अप्रोच है, प्रकृति रक्षिता रक्षता, जो नेचर के साथ हम लोग एक व्यवहार बना करके चलने की कल्पना लेकर के चलते हैं। और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि ये सच है कि हमको अंतिम व्यक्ति तक क्लाइमेट जस्टिस को पहुंचाना होगा, उसको एनर्जी, उसकी लाइफ स्टाइल में उसके आवश्यक कंजम्पशन को भी देना होगा, लेकिन उसके साथ ही साथ कंजम्पशन पैटर्न में रीसाइकल, रीयूज़, रीप्रोड्यूस और सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी को स्ट्रेंथन करना होगा। मैं इस प्लेनरी सेशन, ये जो सेशन है, इसके डिबेट को ओपन करता हूँ। आप सब लोगों के विचार आमंत्रित हैं। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. You have highlighted the macro picture behind circular economy and also the fact that it has a multi-sectoral requirement, and indeed, that is the whole purpose of today's discussion. So I will ask Secretary Road Transport and Highways, because one of the key aspects when we talk about circularity is about their vehicle scrapping policy. So for the benefit of all our participants, can you share with us the key aspects of vehicle scrapping policy?
माननीय मंत्री जी, Secretary Madam Leena Nandan ji, and all my other colleagues on the dais, and of course the audience. Ma'am, speaking about the end-of-life vehicles and how do we treat the debris which is now being created or the garbage which is now being created, the government in the year 2021, October, came out with the voluntary vehicle modernization program. And in this, one of the key aspects was scrappage of our vehicles. In fact, if we see the emissions because of just transport contribute to about 14% of the carbon emissions. And out of this 14% carbon emissions happening from the transport sector, roughly 50 to 60% comes from the larger commercial vehicles. We have absolutely no regulation and safe disposal systems or safe scrappage system in the country. It was with the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister and of course the learnings of the major ship-breaking yard which is in Alang that this scrappage policy was announced. I would admit over here that we have been slow, the uptake has been slow, but in the last few months, we have seen a lot of traction, and this has been possible with our multiple stakeholders. Secretary Steele is here, MSTC is playing a very key role, and various other ministries of the government also are playing a very key role in this. The vehicle scrappage policy aims at creating an ecosystem for identification of vehicles which should now be off the road. To begin with, we have at this point in time come out with a GSR or notification which has said that no government vehicle more than 15 years of life shall be on road or it shall be re-registered. So that is one cutoff that we have, and we have roughly 2.5 lakh vehicles across various ministries, departments, and the state governments. Now, after this notification that came in, and I'm also very happy to share with you over here, the Ministry of Finance also came in, and they said, we will also announce the capital incentive scheme to the states who follow this protocol of ours, and the states would get certain incentives for scrapping their old vehicles or getting the entire ecosystem in place. The uptake after that has been very good, and I'm very happy to share with you over here, roughly in a span of about 3 or 4 months when the scheme of capital incentive subsidy or capital incentive scheme was announced, 6 states have already claimed so. The older commercial vehicles which are on the road and they have been manufactured before 2000, they are posing a bit challenge to us. Although they constitute less than 1% of the total fleet right now, but they contribute towards 15% of the overall carbon emission or the emission, the pollution, which is 10 to 25% more times more than any other normal vehicle. The VVMP is one of the important steps towards promoting the modernization of the vehicular population also in the country. It is like a multi-edged thing that is in the policy. Number one, we are scrapping the older vehicles. Number two, we are reducing the carbon emission. And number three, we are also helping the automobile industry in their own businesses. We all know automobile sector contributes in a big way in the overall economic situation of the country because there's a lot of employment, and also the revenue collections by way of GST, etc., are much higher. The key objectives are to reduce the population of unfit vehicles, achieve reduction in vehicular air pollution, and improve the road and vehicular safety, achieve better fuel efficiency. This is one of the criticisms that we face, that if we are taking these roads off the road, where would a common man find his vehicle? Because the cost of the new vehicle is very high. So this is one of the key concerns that we have been sharing and trying to make people aware, that the reduction in consumption of fuel would in fact reduce the burden on the pocket, formalize the current informal sector. So even today, as I speak, there is a lot of scrappage that is happening, but it is all in the informal sector, wherein there are two things happening. Number one, also the older vehicles which are unfit, which are not to be on the road, they are being passed on. In other states, Delhi has a restriction of 10 years, but they are being passed on to the other states. Number two, the system of disposal itself is very hazardous. So that also needs to be controlled and has to be brought into the formal sector, and boost availability of low-cost raw material which comes out of scrappage, which is steel, rare earth metals like neodymium and praseodymium, and which is used for automotive, steel, and electronics industry. The vehicle scrapping policy is also a significant step towards reforming the way the vehicles would reach their end of life, which I have just mentioned over here. At this point in time, with the government regulation coming in place, the public portal of MSTC coming in place, we have seen a big jump. In 2022 October, while we had scrapped just about 2,000 vehicles, today as I speak, we have scrapped roughly 20,000 vehicles. Many more vehicles are in queue. The state governments are also now picking up on the vehicle scrapping policy. But there are few other things which are not happening, and many of the states are not really responding to the mandate which has been given. There are three mandates. Number one, the tax concessions have to be given for those vehicles which are being bought in place of old scrapped vehicles, for which we give the CD deposits. The second thing is about the waiver of old liabilities. These 2-3 things are not happening. It's only 6 or 7 states which have at this moment been able to announce their policies on all of these 3 aspects. There is also an ecosystem in some of the states, for example, Gujarat and some other states, who are giving incentives for setting up the registered vehicle scrapping facilities, which is not there in other states. I urge upon the state participants who are over here to give focus to this industry, because it is not only scrapping of vehicles, but it will also lead to employment and furtherance of the economy. Automatic testing stations, because now I am moving on from the government vehicles to the private vehicles. Whereas as of date, we do not have the mandate of scrapping private vehicles because the ecosystem has to be in place. As of now, we have only 7 automated testing stations. Currently, the fitness certificate is given by the RTO, but it is a single source certification that is happening. What is important is to have neutral testing stations which will genuinely assess the fitness of the vehicles. Even though there has been so much of a push from the center, but as of date, we have only 7 such automated testing stations which have which have become functional. About 45 such automated testing stations have been approved, but for one reason or the other, they are still not functional. Many of the states have gone on there is a national single window system where a person can apply, and it is available to all the states. Only 18 states are using this. Uh, Many of the states have gone on on a RFP basis. However, they are still not able to conclude. And hence the first step, which is the infrastructure requirement for fitness certification, is not in place. RBSFs, I'm happy to share that a number of states have come forward and we have approved, we have almost 15 of these RBSFs functional, which have become functional over the last 6-7 months. There used to be only 6 earlier, but now we have 15 such, and roughly 30 or 35 of such RBSFs will become functional in the next financial year. So scrapping as such as a policy talks about this entire ecosystem, and unless until we have that entire ecosystem in place, we would not be able to achieve this vision of the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Alka. Can I ask you also to talk a little about circularity in the process of road construction, because that's also a very important aspect.
Surely, ma'am, because this is something which we struggle with all the time. As the specifications of the roads have increased over the years, so has the demand for the material. And we all know that local natural resource is very, very scarce. There is a big need, or there is a need to create an ecosystem or policies which will facilitate optimization of use of natural resources. And while we talk about optimization of natural resources, I'll take a step back. There are 2 other optimizations that we need to think of. One is optimization of design, which will of course result in cost-effective construction of roads. The second thing is reduction. We have to also visualize the reduction in carbon footprint, which is very high in the source material that we use for road constructions, be it bitumen or be it asphalt. The life cycle cost. So weighing all of these factors together, there is a need to promote new technology, and several steps have already been taken in this. The import of bitumen is very, very high in this country, and the construction sector is a big guzzler of bitumen. We need to see how we can use other materials. We are talking about using of tires, we're using plastic waste, substituting a bit of bitumen. All of these will go a long way. So 1, 2, 3 or 4 things that the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has started doing is using the cement-treated sub-base and cement-treated base layer, stone mix, asphalt. All of this will reduce the dependency on those materials which have very high carbon footprint. Use of local material like jute and coir and other geosynthetic material for stabilization of slopes and other such banks, etc. Use of plastic waste. Plastic waste has been very, very successfully used in all of the rural roads, and now even in the national highways we're using plastic waste. It has been made mandatory as far as the service roads are constructed, and now we're gaining more confidence. Plastic waste, which is abundantly available, is also being used in the main carriageway. A reclaimed asphalt pavement, that's the other way. In fact, RAP has become a very, very popular, which is also not only reducing the carbon footprint, but also improving the pace of construction. Construction and use of demolition waste. So wherever this waste is available, we are also using the same. Very recently, with the help of Ministry of Steel, we have also decided to take up the use of steel slag in a big way. Thanks to Ministry of Environment and Forest, very early on when fly ash was made mandatory, we have substituted a lot of earth material and we're using fly ash to the extent now that We are facing a problem, the road construction sector is facing a problem of availability of fly ash. Similarly, we would like to use steel slag. And last point that I want to mention over here is there is also a need for a segregation of urban waste. And talking of Delhi, recently I saw mountains of such trash in Kolkata. So wherever we have these urban waste with segregation, the same can be used. A lot of Ghazipur waste material was used in construction of Delhi Merit Expressway. So I think these are some of the items that can be taken up in terms of circularity, using local material, and the soil stabilization, I think, is a very big step forward where we will be reducing the need of natural material and substituting it with these stabilizers.
Thank you. I think that was a comprehensive overview of what are the benefits and the potential of vehicle scrapping, but what is it that we now really need to put into place for this to be as effective as it promises to be? And in terms of roads, what are the materials that can be used in road construction? And hopefully the participants here would be taking note, because MORTH is the one which sets standards for roads across the country. So certainly there's a lot of potential for this. I would now like to ask my colleague, Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, because there is a huge fillip that is being given to generation of CBG from biodegradable waste. So, Pankaj, could you share with the participants a little more about it?
Honorable Minister, and thank you, ma'am. So I'll talk a bit about a point which Madam Secretary just highlighted. It's called compressed biogas. For those of you who are not familiar with it, you might hear an acronym called SATAT, which is short for Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation. What this basically means is, most of you are familiar with something called biogas. Conventionally, we have understood biogas used to come from cow dung. Now, there is, I think, much evolution which has happened on this. Today, we know that not just cow dung, there are actually a variety of materials from which you can generate gas. This gas is not just biogas, it can be done at commercial scale. If you filter this and you compress it, then you can actually use it in a vehicle just like compressed natural gas. In fact, in times to come, this budget just announced that compressed gas which you normally use in your vehicle, or piped natural gas which you may be using in your homes, will soon have a blending obligation of compressed biogas. Now, where does compressed biogas arise from? I mentioned about cow dung, but probably something far, far more important than cow dung and far more productive than cow dung is wet waste. So municipal waste, which is segregated, that in fact gives us yields which are twice as much as we get from cow dung. So cow dung will give me typically 2.5% yield, wet waste will give me 5% yield, and there is something else which, for those of you who have sugarcane factories in your state, there is something which is wasted over there called spent wash. It is currently incinerated. Spent wash actually gives me 10% yield, so 4 times the yield which I could actually get from cow dung. And a good compressed biogas plant, and it doesn't cost too much money. A commercial scale compressed biogas plant can come up in 200 crores, 250 crores, and the yields can be excellent. It can also be operated in tandem with sugarcane plants, with ethanol plants. It can be standalone, and it uses materials like paddy straw, mustard, all kinds of agriculture waste which you see in villages and so on. All of that can easily be used and converted into gas which can be transported through pipelines, which can actually be used to drive vehicles without any change in engine specifications. So that's the beauty of something called compressed biogas. You'll be seeing a big expansion happening in this in the weeks and months to come. A lot of these such plants are currently being completed. They will be getting commissioned next year and the year after. Now, what that really means is, for the state governments, firstly, many states have done a phenomenal job in terms of ensuring segregation of municipal solid waste. Some states are yet to catch up, but I'm sure they will. But then this is something which has so far been focused much more on cities and towns. I think there is an equal need to create this awareness that there is money in agriculture waste and spread this message to rural areas, and thereafter being able to develop chains through which, supply chains through which this material can be aggregated and comes to a central point where this can be converted to biogas. Some land is going to be required for setting up the facility of a CBG, but also for storage of this material. So there will be cycles. For example, with agriculture waste, there are often seasonalities involved. So you don't get paddy 12 months a year, you don't get mustard waste 12 months a year, so sometimes you have to stock for the remaining months, so you need some land to stock it. Often barren land, if that is made available, that is very useful where we can do this. Some places right-of-ways may be only for pipelines to carry this. And that again is something which only the states can provide. And finally, just creating awareness on the fact that there is money available to everybody in this chain, from people who segregated it, people who generated the waste, to people who are picking it up and converting it to something else. Technology is all available indigenously. It's the private sector supplies it, the enough suppliers in India, and it's something which, as biogas, you're familiar with. You just add filtration and compression, and you're good to go.
Thank you, Pankaj. I think that really opens up a whole series of ideas and opportunities, and I do hope especially our participants who've come from different parts of the country have taken note of the point that right from agricultural residue to municipal solid waste, all of it can be put to use and productively, and it's a win-win for all participants of the value chain. I would also like to ask you to elaborate a bit upon waste oil and how that can action out in the circular economy domain.
So again, you see, there are some things interesting which most of us may not be aware of. When you go and buy lubricants for any lube that you buy for your vehicle, how many of you are aware that almost all of it is actually recycled oil? We have actually a phenomenal collection chain for wasted oil which comes out of cars, two-wheelers and so on. This gets converted into lubricants at lubricant factories across the country. So what we call base oil, that is actually, it's really a success story, and it's an unheralded success story. That 80 to 90%, you think that all your workshops are disorganized in the unorganized sector. So whether they're in the organized sector or unorganized sector, there is actually, this oil is not going to drains. It is getting converted into lubes and greases. What we are trying to do is, today we are generating about 1,500 TMT of used oil, which is available. We are currently able to utilize just about 500 to 600. We are setting up new factories so that whatever we are generating also, we are able to utilize even the rest of it, so that we don't have to import any base oil. The other interesting thing over here is used cooking oil. Again, now there's so much of fresh thinking which has happened in the recent years on this. If we can put together an equally efficient collection chain for used cooking oil, so cooking oil in your dhabas and hotels and so on, rather than using it again and again for cooking, which is carcinogenic, the same thing can actually be converted to biodiesel and is being done. And that biodiesel gets blended with regular diesel, which again means that what you are doing is, in the oil and gas industry, we typically use a term called valorization, which really means you're adding value to something which is otherwise getting wasted. So whether it is oil that is coming out of vehicles, it is oil which is coming out of kitchens, or it is something called off gases which get generated during refining processes, we capture those gases, we can convert them into ethanol. So in all these areas, there's actually, these are all very exciting fields to be in, because each one of them means money, and commercially they make enormous sense.
Thank you, and I think that is a very relevant point. We are actually working on an EPR framework for used oil, so this builds in very well into the action that is being undertaken by the Ministry of Environment. I would now like to ask Dr. Vyas from the Department of Atomic Energy, what is it they have come up with technology that can really transform the way we handle the municipal sludge, that means urban fecal matter. So how is it that this technology can be utilized? Dr. Vyas, could you care to explain a little in detail, because this is of great relevance to all our participants. It's a new concept, so we would really need to understand more from you.
बहुत बहुत आभार लीना जी, परम आदरणीय भूपेंद्र यादव जी, आदरणीय मेंबर्स ऑन द पैनल। मैम, इफ़ यू परमिट, एक छोटी सी फिल्म है करीब 2 मिनट की। कैन आई हैव द फिल्म प्लीज?
Sewage treatment is crucial for public health, and sewage treatment plants, or STPs, play a vital role in making wastewater safe for discharge or industrial reuse. However, STPs also generate a significant amount of residual sludge that needs to be dried using solar heat. A large city like Ahmedabad has 7 STPs that treat around 800 million liters of sewage and generate over 100 tons of dried sludge every day. As this sludge is contaminated, its disposal poses a challenge for municipalities, and often this sludge ends up with farmers, posing a risk to both cultivators and consumers. BARC has developed radiation technology for hygienization of dried sludge. It involves removal of unwanted items like plastic and carrying the filtered sludge in tote boxes for gamma ray irradiation using cobalt-60. Irradiation effectively removes all pathogens from sludge. The radiation treatment process is automated, safe, and monitored from an on-site control room. A radiation treatment plant has been made operational at Ahmedabad. A similar plant has been commissioned recently at Indore. Radiation-treated sludge is sprinkled with a special bio-NPK liquid culture developed by Anand Agricultural University to produce a green, organic carbon-rich biofertilizer called BioGold. Field trials of BioGold have shown increased agricultural productivity when optimally combined with urea. Trials of BioGold along with BARC-developed hydrogel has shown encouraging results for tree plantation also. Irradiation is a well-established and recommended technique for the treatment of dried sludge. Converting sludge into green fertilizer using radiation is a step forward towards a circular economy. The development complements the call of the Honorable PM Shri Narendra Modi ji for reducing indiscriminate use of chemical fertilizers. The R&D work carried out by DAE has the potential for many societal and industrial applications.
Ma'am, I would just like to thank you, add a few things here. The challenges, number one, in this bio sludge or whatever the dried sludge is going to be there, it will have some industrial effluents also mixed, and there is a need for having standards the way they have in USA as well as in EU. For example, they have different standards for biocompost and they have different standards for biosludge. I would also like to sort of take this into consideration that this particular film showed 2 tamarind plants. Large number of trials have been taken. Some trials have taken even in Asola with help from the forest department. Some trials have been taken in Haryana also, where if you add little bit of few grams of hydrogel along with the biosludge, we need to water the trees practically for 50% of the time. That is, if a tree needs about 10 liters of water in a week, this will survive with 5 liters. And you saw the 2 plants. On the left hand side was a control specimen with a natural habitat, and the right hand side, this was at Hingoli, where our LIGO project is coming up. So my suggestion before I sort of request you for any specific question is like this, that till these standards are made for afforestation, this is a very good thing. When I had given briefing of this particular thing to the Honorable PM, he had requested us that why don't you take up this particular afforestation at Ektasal, there are some hills which are relatively barren. So he had asked us, we have taken some trial, about 1,000 trees have been planted, and they are all doing reasonably well. I mean, there is some problem not related to hydrogel or biosludge. Uh, Ideally speaking, we should have done the termite treatment there before planting. Unfortunately, we made a mistake in that. So the trees which have grown very nicely, they are affected by termite. Otherwise, most likely in this monsoon, we'll try to take up some more trees plantation also. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Vyas. And it's interesting that you mentioned, because there was a study that was assigned to CPCB. And in fact, the sludge which is not mixed with the industrial effluent, that study has actually demonstrated good application potential. And therefore, I think there is a scope for the Department of Fertilizers and Department of Agriculture to pursue this further. I would also like to ask you, because that will be a question uppermost in the minds of many participants who are coming from different states. What would be the applicability in terms of the investment or the technical know-how if they were to utilize or set up a plant using this technology? How possible or affordable would this be?
Thank you, ma'am. See, typically, the cost of Ahmedabad plant, which is about 100 metric tons per day, it's a very large capacity plant. It will have an investment about 35 crores or so. This particular, if there are large number of municipal corporations interested in taking it up, we can optimize this particular plant so that civil construction cost can be reduced, and we can do some increased automation also. There are people who can sort of build these plants. There are private entities, about 3 to 4 enterprises, entrepreneurs are there, MSMEs, who can build this type of plants, and they can operate for a long period also. So, and my suggestion would be, if Government of India can consider giving a small share of the total cost, even DAE will be able to give some help to any of the municipalities which is wanting. Pune Municipal Corporation has shown interest in setting up a similar plant. Surat Municipal Corporation, they are also showing some interest. With PMC, already MOU has been signed, as I understand. With Surat Municipal Corporation, the discussions are in the progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there is indeed tremendous potential. Now I would like to request the ACS Tamil Nadu to give a state perspective, because there's a lot of waste management policies and implementations of projects that are taking place in Tamil Nadu, which would benefit all of us. If you would just share some more details. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable Minister, sir, respected Secretary Leena Nandan, ma'am, other secretaries to Government of India, dear colleagues, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I would like to start by paying a tribute to our grandmothers, who were the real champions of the recycling or the circularity, as all of us would remember. Do you recall how every little plastic packaging that came to our homes were safely collected by them, neatly folded and kept till it ultimately got completely used? They never wasted food. The leftover dals were used to make chapatis. The husk of the coconut was always used to clean utensils, and all kinds of waste was always used. Those were the days when the slogan was that you buy less, use it all, and reuse it. But now, if you fast forward and look at what is happening today, it's like buy more, use less, and throw all. I think it's very important that, as the Honorable Minister pointed out, for all of us to really take a step back and think what we are doing to our planet. A recent study by the University of Newcastle in Australia has brought out that we consume up to a credit or a debit card's worth of plastic every week. That's about approximately 5 grams of plastic. That's scary. And that's why at the state level in Tamil Nadu, we have launched a massive project, which is basically the idea of going back to basics, going back to the history, creating a new paradigm of the circular economy and creating the waste to wealth, as the Honorable Minister gave a call and talked about. It's also very important to understand that when we take up projects of this kind, there are a huge amount of challenge that we have, but fortunately for us, we have been able to kind of bring out a paradigm shift and have been able to successfully implement several projects. I'd like to just talk about 3-4 of them. One is about the fact that a state like Tamil Nadu has a huge challenge also because we have a large coastline. 1,075 kilometers is the coastline that we have in Tamil Nadu, and about 14 districts are coastal districts. Having said that, there is a large amount of ocean-bound plastic that actually causes a lot of challenge. So what are we doing about it? In Tamil Nadu, we have mapped all the plastic recyclers, about 565 plastic waste recyclers that we have. We have mapped the data and we have been able to bring them all into a system of waste recycling. And we have several units set up where the plastic is collected, brought to these particular units, and it is then processed for, as it was also brought by the secretaries earlier, used for the cement factories, sent for the construction of roads, etc., and also used for extraction of mineral oil. So that is what we are doing. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was a huge public people's movement, which was launched by the Honorable Chief Minister, and that is the Manjapai campaign. As I mentioned, that all of us are aware that plastic bags are so dangerous to our planet, our environment. So Tamil Nadu, we have launched the Mindum Manjapai campaign, which is going back again to the cloth bags, the yellow bags that people used to use. The point here is that the eco-friendly practices or the life approach that has already been highlighted is something that we need to bring. And I think that is something Tamil Nadu is doing at this point of time. We have also brought out the Manjapai vending machines, which is the cloth vending machines. So if you go for shopping or you go to big markets and you have forgotten to carry your bag, you can put in 10 rupees and this machine will dispense a cloth bag to you, which you can use for shopping. About 100 such machines have already been kept ready, and about 35 of them have already been installed. We plan to do it in all the shopping malls and market areas. There is another important thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is how we are trying to bring circularity when it comes to our forest areas. It's a common knowledge that the lantana, which is a very, very dangerous weed, is taking over our forests. What are we doing to make sure that this lantana, which is killing the biodiversity, is removed from the forests and then used in the principle of circularity so that it is not wasted and it is put to some use? Tribal communities in Mudhumalai area, they are removing lantana from our forests and they are making replicas of life-size elephants, furniture, and other such material so that our forests can be freed from the bad impact of lantana. We have another weed which is called Senna spectabilis that also we are removing, and we have successfully connected to the paper making mills where the weed is removed and sent to the paper making mills to make paper. So these are some of the initiatives that I thought I would highlight. And ma'am, these are few things that we are doing at this point of time.
Thank you. I think the bioeconomy that you mentioned is also an integral part of circularity. And that is something that is equally important. So whether it's agricultural waste or it is the lantana weed, there is a lot of scope for circular bioeconomy. Was there a video that you wanted to show?
This was another initiative which I wanted to talk about was all of us have laptops, phones, and Honorable Minister also mentioned about it. So did we ever think as to what is actually going to all this e-waste that we are generating in millions of tons? So here in Tamil Nadu, we have 6 units set up which are recycling e-waste. And if I can just talk about the data, the e-waste recycling facility, just one facility, which is, just to emphasize on the concept of waste to wealth, has recovered 37 kilograms of gold, 455 kilograms of silver, about 5,151 tons of copper, 6,200 tons of aluminium, and huge amounts of other metals. And I would like to show you a short 1-minute film over here. Can we have the film? Thank you.
Thank you, Supriya. I think that was very interesting, this video, because we have in the earlier session also talked about e-waste and how much it has become a problem along with being a great facility for all of us. It poses such severe problems for the planet. So I think these kind of initiatives that the state government has undertaken, and I'm sure that other states are also doing it, would really go a long way in addressing the problem of electronic and e-waste. Now we would like to open up the session for questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and ask your question and introduce yourself in the process, along with mentioning who you would like your question to be addressed to.
I'm Vivek Bharadwaj.
Yeah.
I hope this is I'm audible. Um, just a couple of data points. Uh, India recycles 26% of its aluminum. North America recycles 57%. And Australia recycles 72%. So I think the initiative taken by Secretary Motz will go a long way in increasing our recycling rates. The reason why recycling is important for India is that we actually import 25% of scrap. Our entire consumption, 25% is scrap. For 6 years, we are struggling to formulate import standards. The second reason is that it really helps in decarbonization, because again, if we talk about aluminum, for 1 kg of ingot, we need 22.5 kilowatt hour of energy. When we recycle and use it, we need 1.5. Now the action points, we've spoken about e-waste. The Honorable Minister also spoke about 17 minerals and metals coming out. Unfortunately, all of these land up in Brussels. That is the global hub of recycling of critical minerals. I think we need to restrict export of these minerals so that we become the global hub. Because we have any day much larger number of electronics in India than in the EU. The other action point is that in many of these mines, there's a huge dumps of processed ores. When you've taken away the, the bauxite, whatever is left. In fact, in a place like Kolar, gold mines, we have 50 million tons of processed ore. And if you process it, you'll get 10,000 tons of gold today. So our tender is ready. We hope to issue it after the Karnataka elections. But this is also a huge source of critical minerals. So we need to focus on recycling of dumps also. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Steele, in the front row. Front row.
Thank you for providing me this opportunity. The point which was made in terms of the scrapping of vehicle helping decarbonize, and it not only helps through use of less of fuel, but it also helps us produce same volume of steel through lower use of energy or lower carbon emission. If we take the data with regard to the way scrap is utilized, typically it's utilized through uh, uh, the electric arc furnace route or electric induction furnace route. And there, the utilization of energy and the carbon emission thereafter is typically about 0.5 kg per kg of steel produced. And if we do it through virgin materials, it's about 2.5 kg per kg of steel produced. So that way also it's quite beneficial. And as my colleague Secretary Mine mentioned, we are importing about 25% of the total raw material as scrap for the steel being produced. So in this case, there are two asks which I wish to make. One, and to inform that if vehicle scrappage facility is beyond 100 kilometers, the cost of transport of the vehicle to be scrapped becomes prohibitive, and it's no longer makes economic sense for vehicle to be towed from some other place to the scrapping facility. So we need to have an optimum number of vehicle scrapping facilities, and that's about 300 to 400. That is a number that we have arrived at. And to build that demand, we need to make sure that there are enough number of private vehicles that come to these vehicle scrappage facilities. And that will help to some extent or to a very large extent by establishment of automated testing station, but also the quality of enforcement would go a long way in ensuring that all those vehicles which are declared, which are which have reached their end of life, they are brought to the automated testing station, they are tested, they are declared unfit, and they are brought to the scrapping facilities. And the other point also being that we carry out checks on various roads to see that these vehicles are not flying on the road. So all these actions require strong involvement of the state government at various levels, at the policy levels, at the at the enforcement level, at the field, in the districts and otherwise. So there I request through this forum everyone to put together their effort, their energy into ensuring that this aspect of circularity is really implemented. Although we know that the quality of scrap that will generate would only be meeting a small portion of the demand for scraps. Typically, if you take countries like Iran, they produce about 93% of steel through scrap route. There are several other countries in the Middle East that produce that high level. But in our country, the steel use has picked up only in last few years. So we will typically take about 20 to 30 years before our volume of scrap becomes sufficient. The other point which I wish to make at this forum and also to request Honorable Minister is to also think about scrapping of white goods. So a lot of white goods are now being utilized and they are also reaching end of life. We typically replace our washing machine in 5 years time and things like that. So those are also important and we will certainly request that those also put to use. And wherever, I mean, even if their rules are not there, the district authorities and field officials can really ensure that there are channels which are established to utilize the scraps which are generated out of the white goods for the scrapping centers, and they are utilized for steel making. Thank you.
Alka, would you like to respond on the vehicle scrapping? And then I would like to take your point about white goods.
Ma'am, in fact, it's quite a chicken and egg situation at this point in time. So while on one hand, we don't have the ecosystem, on the other hand, when we speak to these stakeholders, they come and say that they don't have enough business. So I think going together, I think the way enforcements are to be put in place. Recently, we had a discussion where one minister from Rajasthan, the transport minister from Rajasthan said, कि private vehicles जब तक नहीं आएगी तब तक mass हमको नहीं मिलेगा. So we are in that situation, sir, and hopefully the market will stabilize. सर जो आपने ये बात कही कि 200 से 300 vehicles एक साथ अगर हम नहीं लाते हैं तो it becomes very difficult for an RVSF to quote adequate price. We have been monitoring the prices being quoted for this, and so as of now, the market has come into play. There is competition and not very fierce competition, but there is some amount of competition and fair rates are going out for scrapping as well. But these are challenges and we are well aware of them and will try to minimize with the help of all these RVSFs that are being planned in the next 2 or 3 years, next 6 months.
Just to very quickly respond to the point on white goods. So the ministry notified the electronic and e-waste rules in November last year, and that puts the onus on the producers, importers, and brand owners of electric and electronic goods of at least 106 items, where it aims to encourage proper recycling and processing and extracting of valuable material, and also refurbishment so that there is a prolonged second life, rather than the use and throw aspect, which we all know is really detrimental to the cause of the environment. I think Secretary Shipping wanted to ask a question.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Sudhansh Pant. I'm Secretary, Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways. In recycling, India is in ship recycling and breaking. We are one of the largest nations in the world. At one point of time, we were number one till about 10 years back. Due to various market forces and some other factors, our compliance costs have gone up because we signed the Hong Kong Convention 2009. So, but still efforts are being made with the help of Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and the Bureau of Indian Standards and others now, even MEA, that recycling, which is gone slightly down over the last 4-5 years, it again comes up. So this ship recycling is contributing about 2 to 3% of the total steel market in India. So it's a very big thing. Ships from all over the world are coming. For some years now, because of the European Union ship recycling regulations, the European ships stopped coming here. But even at that level, through the Ministry of External Affairs, efforts are being made that they come. Second thing, sir, which in line with the concept of waste to wealth, we have started a Sagar Samriddhi program because a lot of dredging of material takes place in the ports and in the national waterways. All that dredged material was going absolutely waste. So recently guidelines have been issued so that even from that waste we could generate wealth. It has happened in many dams across the country, even in Rajasthan, where I have an idea, that just by dredging of one dam, instead of the government paying to the dredging company, the dredging company has paid nearly 3,000 crores to the government because of the dredged sand which can be sold and in the market. So we recently issued the Sagar Samriddhi so that the dredged material, more than 100 million cubic meter of material is being dredged in our various ports and in the national waterways. This is going to be sold by the dredging contractor himself. The cost of our dredging projects are going to come down substantially because the market value of this dredged material is going to be factored in the cost of the project. So just one or two interventions which I thought, since we're talking of a circular economy, I can bring to the notice of the esteemed panelists. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think one last question from Secretary Interstate Council.
First, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister and the panelists for such a informative session and the inputs that we got. Some of the issues, especially regarding RVSF, we have been taking up with all the states through the forum of the zonal councils. We have been persuading the states to increase the number of facilities to come onto the single window system and to adopt the policy regarding incentives and disincentives. My thought was that in all these policies, in all these areas, the role of the informal actors is very important. Whether for the vehicle scrapping, so how do we, because there is the consumer, the vehicle owner also would prefer perhaps to go to the informal sector if he's getting a higher price for the vehicle. So, and for the used cooking oil, which was mentioned, because I've worked in the food processing industry, and food processing ministry, and we knew, because from the food safety point of view, it's so important that we don't use the used cooking oil again and again. But then how do you sort of bring these informal eateries, the street food vendors, the halwais, the sweet shops into the system, because also build up the consumer awareness. So perhaps whether when we are thinking about this entire supply chain, whether how do we make the informal sector partners in this policy? Whether at the central ministry level we are thinking of it, or whether we sort of left it to the states that they may think of their best practices, and then perhaps something may come out from there. Maybe Secretary Petroleum and Natural Gas on the used cooking oil, in terms of how whether the food safety part also has been brought into the policy.
So, okay, the food safety part hasn't, I mean, that in fact was the trigger in so many ways to say that, look, it should not be reused. But in the used cooking oil space, the initial focus was much more on the organized sector, because that is where the volumes were available. So large 5-star hotels and 3-star chains and so on and so forth. At the end of it, I think while the state has some role, the bigger role will be in terms of who's anchoring the supply chain. Because this, once it is collected, it is not going, it has to go back into a proper refining process. And that refining process would be led again by the oil marketing companies. So the oil marketing companies are the ones who are going to be anchoring these chains. So since we have a role model by which, we have a model in which it worked for vehicular oil, That is now something which we are now trying to do a similar thing in terms of connecting to the informal sector so that there are ways of aggregating this.
Just to add one more point, there is a need for the informal sector to come into the organized value chain so that the methodologies that they deploy for the processing are also environment friendly. So the way that we have handled this is that the value chain that we have developed, the extended producer responsibility portal, which is actually taking care of all the waste material that we talked about, plastics, waste tires, e-waste, all of them, only those which are registered by the SPCBs can be part of the value chain, and they will only be authorized to produce the recycling certificates that the producers require to be able to prove that they have fulfilled their obligations under the extended producer responsibility rules. So we are encouraging the informal sector to get formalized so that they do the environmentally approved process of disposal, and the material that is extracted actually goes back properly into the value chain for producing more of the product. That is how the effort is to bring it all into an institutional framework. So thank you all. I think it has been very good that there's a lot of interest and participation, and we hope to continue the discussions even outside this session. I will request the Honorable Minister to kindly sum up the deliberations of today.
पूरे सत्र को सुनने के बाद अलग अलग मंत्रालयों में चल रहे अच्छे विषयों की जानकारी प्राप्त हुई। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट ने जो विषय कहा कि सड़क बनाने में जो प्लास्टिक वेस्ट, जूट वेस्ट का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, अभी हमारे रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट मिनिस्टर ने यूपी मेरठ की सड़क का उद्घाटन भी किया और एक एग्जाम्पल भी वो बना है। अब हम पूरा ODF को पूरा कर चुके हैं, ODF 2 पे भी आ गए हैं। तो ऐसे में जो स्लैज, जो वेस्ट है, उसके बारे में अभी से अगर हमने पॉलिसी मेजर्स नहीं उठाए तो जिस चीज़ पर हमें उपलब्धि है वो चीज़ हमारे लिए चुनौती भी बनेगी। खासकर जिसको रूरल अर्बन एरिया कहते हैं, जहाँ पर अभी तक पूरा प्लान नहीं है, वहाँ पर फिर वो गाड़ियाँ कहीं भी डिस्पोज ऑफ करती हैं। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट फॉरेस्ट ने इस पर एडवांस स्टेप लेते हुए रूल फ्रेमिंग के लिए एक टेक्निकल एक्सपर्ट कमेटी का भी गठन किया है। कभी कभी कुछ अच्छे उदाहरण भी हमें ध्यान में आते हैं, जैसे पेट्रोलियम मिनिस्ट्री ने पानीपत के पास जो रिफाइनरी है, 2 लाख टन का है, 2 लाख टन का उन्होंने पैडी वेस्ट के लिए एक पूरा प्लांट उन्होंने लगाया है। और पिछले साल लगातार जब मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ पेट्रोलियम, एनर्जी मिनिस्ट्री, एग्रीकल्चर मिनिस्ट्री ने दिल्ली के आसपास जो हमारी सबसे बड़ी समस्या रहती है पैडी बर्निंग की, उस पर कलेक्टिव एफर्ट किया तो उसका परिणाम ये आया। और ये तो डाटा चूँकि ऊपर से इसरो से मॉनिटर्ड होकर डाटा आता है कि 2021 में जहाँ पर पैडी बर्निंग 78,000 इंसिडेंट थे, वो रिड्यूस होकर 55,000 हो गए। हम 40% रिड्यूस कर पाए, कारण हमने इसको कमर्शियल रूप में तब्दील किया, टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ प्लांट लगाए और इसकी कमर्शियल वायबिलिटी बनाई। ये एक 3-4 मिनिस्ट्रियों की कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव अप्रोच का एक ऐसा उदाहरण है। और दिल्ली के जब 21 में जो 53 सीवियर डे होते थे, उसको रिड्यूस करके हम 25 से 30 के बीच में ले आए। तो एक जिसको पैडी बर्निंग को हम कहते थे कि ये दिल्ली के पॉल्यूशन को ख़राब कर रहा है, और अब पानीपत में भी प्लांट लगा, रोपड़ में भी शुरू होने वाला है। ये जो हमारी अप्रोच है सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी को लेकर, क्योंकि तेज़ी से बढ़ने वाला विषय है और भारत सरकार के माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में हम होल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट अप्रोच को लेकर के चल रहे हैं। अपने स्टेटमेंट को शुरू करते समय मैंने जो मिनिस्ट्री ने एज ए रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म के नाते जो रूल्स निकाले हैं और जिन रूल्स पे हम काम कर रहे हैं, मुझे लगता है कि सभी मंत्रालयों को कम से कम उस रूल्स में, पॉलिसी में हम कितना ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा नए आने वाले जो वेस्ट हैं इसको इंक्लूड करा सकें। तो ये अप्रोच होनी चाहिए, पॉलिसी में ओपननेस होनी चाहिए। पॉलिसी बनाने के बाद वो इतनी कठिन हो जाए कि उसको आम आदमी इम्प्लीमेंट ना कर सके, उसकी बजाय उसकी ओपननेस और रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म में भी ट्रांसपेरेंसी होनी चाहिए। और उसमें जो पूरा डिजिटलाइजेशन है, क्योंकि डिजिटलाइजेशन की ताकत है कि हम अपनी ग्रोथ को भी देख सकते हैं, हम इकोनॉमी को भी अप्रोच कर सकते हैं। एक्सेसिबिलिटी सबसे बड़ी चीज़ है। आज सब पॉल्यूशन से लेके सब चीज़ों की जो हम जिसको रियल टाइम मॉनिटरिंग कहते हैं, तो उसके लिए बहुत आवश्यक है इसका प्रयोग करना। अवेयरनेस एक बहुत बड़ी बात है, क्योंकि इस समय एक विषय आया कि अनऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर को जो हम कैसे अप्रोच कर सकते हैं। हमने जो नेशनल क्लीन एयर मिशन प्रोग्राम करा और उसकी जो रीजनल वर्कशॉप लगाई, तो हमने कंपलसरी करा कि जिन सिटीज़ से हम काउंसलर को बुला रहे हैं, म्यूनिसिपल प्रतिनिधियों को बुला रहे हैं, वहाँ के रैक पिकर के जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को जो लोग रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, उनको भी बुलाया जाए, ताकि इसको ग्राउंड लेवल की अप्रोच तक, लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी तक हम लेकर के जाएं। नए इनोवेशन और टेक्नोलॉजी को प्रोत्साहन देने के लिए अलग अलग मंत्रालयों में जो सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी की ताकत बढ़ सकती है, लेकिन केवल पॉलिसी बनाने के साथ नहीं, उसके लिए कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग भी करनी पड़ेगी। और हमारे देश का इसमें एक बहुत बड़ा भविष्य है, नए इनोवेशन है, नई टेक्नोलॉजी है, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग है। इस सारे विषयों को लेकर होल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट अप्रोच के साथ हम चल सकते हैं। आज जिस तरीके से सभी मंत्रालयों ने विषय दिए और आप लोगों के भी सुझाव आए हैं, सतत से लेकर कई नए इनिशिएटिव सरकार के द्वारा लिए गए हैं, इन सारे विषयों पर समन्वित रूप से काम करने की आवश्यकता है। पर ये वास्तविकता है कि सस्टेनेबल वर्ल्ड के लिए सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी ये एक मेजर पॉलिसी इंटरवेंशन की आवश्यकता है, जिसमें कलेक्टिव अप्रोच के साथ, एक नए विज़न के साथ, एक नए काम करने के प्रोसेस के साथ अगर हम आगे चलेंगे और केवल गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी से नहीं, इसमें पब्लिक पार्टिसिपेशन और इसको एक इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी के रूप में जब हम बदलने का काम करेंगे, तो हम इसके टारगेट को अचीव कर पाएंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. In your opening remarks, you had talked about life and what it really entails. So there is a short video that we would like to present for the benefit of all the participants.
मिशन लाइफ का मंत्र है लाइफस्टाइल फॉर एनवायरमेंट। पृथ्वी पर रहने वाले प्रत्येक व्यक्ति को व्यक्तिगत प्रयासों की कामना के साथ ही आज ये मिशन लाइफ का ये विजन दुनिया के सामने रख रहा हूं।
प्रकृति बेटा, पृथ्वी पर तुम्हें क्या करना है तुम्हें पता है ना?
मुझे लोगों को प्यार से इंस्पायर और लाइफ के लिए एजुकेट करना है, ताकि वो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का उपयोग कर इस पृथ्वी को बचाए रखें।
इसमें तुम्हारी मदद करेंगी ये 3 चीजें। पहली, टियारा ऑफ फ्लावर्स, जो तुम्हें हमेशा हैप्पी और एनर्जेटिक रखेंगे। दूसरा, ये बैज ऑफ लाइफ, जो लोगों को पर्यावरण के लिए लाइफ जीवन शैली की याद दिलाएगा। जब वे प्रकृति की रक्षा करेंगे तो प्रकृति उनकी रक्षा करेगी। तुम ये बैज उन लोगों को भी दे सकते हो जो हमारे प्लानेट की बेहतरी के लिए योगदान करते हैं। और तीसरा, ये बैग ऑफ होप, जब भी कोई एनवायरनमेंट को हार्म करे तो तुम इसमें से इको सस्टेनेबल ऑल्टरनेटिव निकाल कर उसे देना।
ओके, अब मैं अपने मिशन पर चलती हूँ। है एक जीवन, है एक मिशन, आओ हम सब मिलकर करें पर्यावरण संरक्षण, पर्यावरण संरक्षण। हर पल गांव और शहर शहर चले इको फ्रेंडली डिस्पोजेबल्स की लहर लहर। कारपूल को अब सब जने अपनाएंगे, अपना शॉपिंग बैग साथ ले जाएंगे। सस्टेनेबल लाइफस्टाइल का है नारा, है ये लक्ष्य हमारा हमारा हमारा। अब हर जन एक पेड़ लगाएगा, पर्यावरण को स्वच्छ बनाएगा। हो सबकी भागीदारी तो खुशियां हरदम।
पर्यावरण वन और जलवायु परिवर्तन मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार।
So we conclude the session today, and let me thank first and foremost the Honorable Minister who has spared time from his session, from his very busy time, to spare this discussion, spare time for this discussion, and also all the participants from all the ministries and the very enthusiastic participation of all those present here today. Thank you all very much, and I think we will really be able to take forward the ideas embedded behind circular economy in a very big way with the participation of all present. Thank you once again.
थैंक यू सो मच मैम। मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा श्री NBS राजपूत, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिफॉर्म्स एंड पब्लिक ग्रीवांसेस, कि वो आएँ और माननीय मंत्री महोदय को सबसे पहले एक स्मृति चिन्ह इस अवसर पर ज़रूर भेंट करें। महोदय, आपकी उपस्थिति और आपके चिंतन से हम सबको जो मार्गदर्शन हमेशा मिलता है, आज भी उसी के अनुरूप हम सबके विचार बिंदुओं को एक नई ऊर्जा मिली है। तो आप सबके करतल ध्वनि के साथ देवियों सज्जनों, माननीय श्री भूपेंद्र यादव जी का, माननीय मंत्री इन्वायरमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, बहुत बहुत आभार। साथ ही सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इन्वायरमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज लीना नंदन जी, उनका बहुत बहुत आभार। सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड हाईवेज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, अलका उपाध्याय जी, बहुत बहुत आभार उनका भी इस पैनल में उनकी उपस्थिति के लिए। सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ पेट्रोलियम एंड नेचुरल गैस, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, श्री पंकज जैन साहब का भी आप सबके करतल ध्वनि के साथ आभार उनकी उपस्थिति के लिए। चेयरमैन एटॉमिक एनर्जी कमीशन एंड सेक्रेटरी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एटॉमिक एनर्जी, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, श्री KN व्यास साहब का भी आपकी करतल ध्वनि के साथ बहुत बहुत आभार। मिस सुप्रिया साहू, एडिशनल चीफ सेक्रेटरी इन्वायरमेंट, क्लाइमेट चेंज एंड फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ तमिलनाडु, उनका भी इस अवसर पर उनकी उपस्थिति के लिए हम आभार व्यक्त करते हैं। और साथ ही श्री नरेश पाल गंगवार जी, एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, उनका भी बहुत बहुत आभार उनकी उपस्थिति के लिए। सभी का आभार, सभी के स्नेहपूर्ण उपस्थिति के लिए हम उनके आभारी हैं, उनके विचारों के लिए हम आभारी हैं। लेडीज़ एंड जेंटलमैन, प्रमोटिंग सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी फॉर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट का हमारा ये प्लेनरी सेशन, जो दूसरा सेशन था, वो यहीं अब संपन्न होता है। थैंक यू वेरी मच। इसके बाद जो हमारे अगले सेशंस हैं, वी विल हैव अ टी ब्रेक फॉर हाफ एन आवर, नॉट हाफ एन आवर बट 20 minutes, but the next breakaway sessions will be on piped water for all, Jal Jeevan Mission. That session, breakaway session, will be in hall number 6. Holistic health care for all, health and wellness centers, hall number 5. And aspirational block program, reaching the last mile, hall number 4. And the improving quality of education, improving outcomes through Vidya Samiksha Kendras, that breakaway session will be held in this plenary hall. So as per the schedule and as per the requirement, you will reach to the